Okay, and here you see an empty set. And what's the best thing about an empty set? Is filling the set up. And that's why I'm walking towards the set now. And I know we don't have a large studio that's that large, but we have to make sure that everything runs properly. So welcome in our studio in Emmeloord. Now let's first talk about these walls. A lot of people ask me like, okay, if you shoot in a studio, you use white seamless or you use gray seamless or any other seamless. Now what is seamless? That's actually paper. And I love paper, don't get me wrong, it's really cool because you can light it different ways, you have always a straight background, but it also makes it very boring because it's always a straight background. And we wanted something else. So actually in our old studio, what we did is we had a lot of walls, and some of those walls were a little bit, let's call it rustic. You know what I mean, right there. They needed a fix up, let's call it that, a little bit rustic. It's if you have a car that's totally beat up, just call it rustic, or call it a new classic, or call it was intended that way. So anyway, we had those walls and we just put a model in front of it, lit it, and it was like, this is so awesome, this looks really great. And we started to think, let's just create those walls. And we started using different paints. Now, what we did in the new studio was something that I didn't like in the old studio. We had these walls and it was great, but you have light fall off. And light fall off means that if you light something, the light will fall off over the distance, meaning it will get darker, right? So why not use that in the paints? Now, if you use the wall behind me, for example, what you can see is that this part is actually lighter than this part. There's also a different structure, but it's the same theme. So meaning I can use the wall in 3-4 different ways. I can shoot on that side and have it really dark with the lines going down. I can use it on this side, have it a little bit more lighter and have that nice, how do you call this effect? I don't know.
Clouds.
Clouds, a little bit more like clouds. And in the middle, we actually make it fade out. So if I'm shooting with my lighting from here to there, I have a very rapid light fall off because the wall gets actually darker. But if I place my light here and I let it shoot that way, because the light is actually traveling over the distance and the wall is lighter, I get a different light fall off. So that's very cool. Some rules. There are rules, of course. First of all, we all have to thank our sponsors, BenQ and Rogue. You guys are awesome because those guys make it possible for me to make Digital Classroom for you for free. And it's a 2-hour broadcast, totally for free for you guys. The other rule is, if you have any questions during Digital Classroom, put up your finger and I will not respond. For the very simple reason, I can't see your finger, guys, so don't put up your finger and go like, Mr. Frank, don't do that. The thing is, we have 2 chat rooms running. One is monitored by Anoweek, that's on Facebook. And that one is a little bit hard to monitor, so if you have a question over there, we'll try to get that answer for you guys. The other one is the chat room on YouTube. And YouTube is very easy to monitor for us. So if you have any questions, try YouTube. If we don't respond on Facebook, it's not because we hate you, we love you guys, but it's because it's a little bit harder to manage. And on YouTube, it's very easy because we have Steffi next to our chat room and she will give me all the questions. Are there any questions at the moment? Oh, she has a hefty new microphone, so what's this?
No, we do not have any questions at the moment.
Oh, you see, she's glowing. She's totally in love with her new microphone. Okay, so enough of that rubbish. Okay, let's start with the first lighting setup. Now, this is one of the things that I love from Rogue. It's, by the way, it's a Mitros Plus strobe from Fodix. And we're using the Frank Doro Flash Bender. Now the cool thing about the Frank Doro Flash Bender is that it has a soft silver inlay, meaning you get a little bit more contrast out of your shot, but also more light output. The other thing is it's totally compatible with all the accessories from Rogue, like for example, in this case, the Striplight, and of course also the softbox. I have to be honest, the softbox I don't use a lot for the very simple reason, it's still a smaller light source and I like a little bit more bite. But the Striplight, that's a totally different story. You have a beautiful light quality, and by using the grid on the Striplight, you can actually pinpoint your light to your model. The model, I knew I forgot something. It's because of the elections and all the weird stuff going on. I knew I forgot something. Anoweek, do we have a model?
Did you call her?
Huh?
Did you call her?
Did you call the model? No, I didn't. Oh my. Okay, let me wait. If we all shout, no, don't be too childish. Okay, we have a model, of course. Louisiana. Do I say that correctly?
More. Little.
A little.
Louisiana.
Louisiana, hello.
Hi.
It's not Louisiana or Louisiana or Louisiana. That's a state in America.
Yeah, I know.
You know.
Yeah, I know that.
Cool, she knows that. She knows everything.
It's from my mother.
Oh, you can stand against the wall. So let's start with placing the light. Now, you know, I'm Mr. Light Meter, right? I always use light meters. But I'm still going to show you this with ETTL. Now, what is ETTL? Metering through the lens. With small flash, you have this option, and nowadays also with big flash, by the way. And ETTL means you don't have to do anything. You can just point your camera, press the shutter button, and you're off. Yeah, it's not that easy. But if you shoot like this, it is that easy. So let's start with the easy way, because we love easy sometimes. Sometimes. Okay. Now, because I'm shooting ETTL doesn't mean I have to put my camera on AV or TV mode. Because if I shoot on AV mode, it will actually calculate the available light and it will add the strobe, giving it, let's say, an 18% gray value. And that's also where the problem is, by the way. So what I have to do is I have to put my camera on manual mode. If I put my camera on manual mode, and let's say ISO 100, and let's say I want to go to f7.1. Why f7.1? I don't know. It's on the camera, I like 7, so why not? Normally, of course, you choose your aperture for the depth of field you want. In this case, we have the let go panels on, so if I'm shooting on 2.8 for a shallow depth of field, I will have a problem with the available light, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to shoot 7.1. If you want to make sure that the available light isn't registered, make sure that the first shot you take is without any strobe. So I'm going to turn this one off. Going to look at our model. Going to take a shot. And if I'm correct, the shot will be very depressing. It's totally dark. So, yeah.
That's depressing.
That's very depressing. I know a lot of people feel that way today. I don't want to go there. Okay, Steffi, are you on Capture One and my image small in the screen? Yep. Awesome. Okay, so you guys can now see the images coming in. We have a big screen with Capture One and we have a smaller screen with me, so you don't have to look at my face all the time, big screen, for all you guys watching on a big screen TV. Now, why Capture One? Very simple. Capture One is very stable with tethering. If something goes wrong, it's never the fault of Capture One in most cases. It's actually more the problem with the cable. And I have to be honest, we're running always on the limit of the cable, so sometimes we have a problem with tethering, but we have some boosters in between and most of the time it works. But don't worry, if it doesn't work with us, it will work with you because we are using a lot of extension cables together. Annemiek, you had a question?
Yeah, it's a question still about the wall. How did you get that effect with the painted wall?
Okay, how do we get the effect with the painted wall? That's a Facebook Live question. Hey Facebook, hey YouTube, hey Annemiek. And the effect is actually done by a professional painter. If I would have done it, yeah, that would be very interesting, I think. More that I get to paint on me instead of on the wall. But they probably just faded it out like you normally fade an effect. So they probably did that. I don't know, I'm not a painter. I'm a photographer and I paint with light. Isn't that a great? Yeah, that's cool. Okay, Louisiana, look please at the light. Very nice. Okay, first shot. It's going to be a very simple, straightforward shot. Something that a lot of people do in their studio. They're going to shoot this and they're going to do it black and white. And I'm going to tell you why it's black and white. Because I'm using my last setting. Remember previous Digital Classroom? I'm not going to fall for that one again. We're going to quickly change this. And then that's not going to happen again. I love it in black and white, by the way. Okay, so let's go to adjustments, reset. There we go. And now, because previous time it also went wrong, I have to make sure that I'm now in the save. Copy from last. Okay, this is my last image. Ah, that was dumb. Okay, so anyway, now it's reset, so it should be okay. Okay, look a little bit more down. Really nice. So I'm going to shoot it with a little bit more of the body in. And now when you look at the shots, it's not that bad. It's okay. I like the light fall off, but it's a little bit standard. A little bit weird. So, the shadow, the shadow is a little bit weird. It's straight behind the model on the wall. And somehow I don't like it that much. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to raise the light a little bit. And make sure that we get a little bit more of a natural shadow. Because in nature, also, the sun comes from the top. There we go. Let's do this. There we go. This is why it's very important, by the way, if you're shooting small strobes. Are you sure the camera is on me, Anouk?
Yeah.
Okay. If you use small strobes, it's very important to use something like a boom stand. Because with a boom stand, you can actually, as you can see here, change the angle of your light. Now, some people will say you can also change it by angling your strobe. That is 100% true. But if you use a heavy modifier, like in this case the strip light, this will happen. It will slowly, and sometimes very fast, it will just fall down. So make sure you use a boom stand. And they can be very cheap. We use Manfrotto's over here, because we love Manfrotto. But it's very, very simple. So we changed the lighting. I'm also going to do something about my composition, which I didn't like. And this is a little bit better. So now you can see that the shadow falls behind our model, and you also see for the first time the problem with ETTL. She's a little bit hot, right? Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. But she's a little bit overexposed on her face. So what you can do is you can actually say, okay, what do you normally do with auto exposure? You can use exposure compensation. Now let's try that. It's going to go to the camera, -2. Going to do the same thing. And nothing worked. It's still the same problem. Ah, that's weird. What did I do wrong? This is what a lot of people do wrong when they use small strobes and they do ETTL. Now, why so much attention for ETTL? Because a lot of the strobes nowadays support ETTL. Like, for example, we're now testing the Indra from Phottix and it has ETTL. Profoto has ETTL. And who knows? Anyway, your brand could come out with ETTL in, let's say, within 2 years. Most strobes will have the option of ETTL. Do I like it? No. I love shooting manual because for the very simple reason I don't want my strobe or my camera to calculate what my exposure will be. I love to do that myself. So I'm using a light meter. The thing is, if you shoot normal with ambient light and you change your exposure compensation, you can actually see that the ambient light is affected. Now in this case I'm shooting strobes, so it doesn't work to use your exposure compensation. We have a question, Anouk? Yes? Oh, Steffi has a question.
Exposure composition only adjusts ambient light, not flash power?
Correct. Exposure compensation only adjusts your ambient light. And this is very powerful because if you're outside, what you can actually do is change the ambient light down and use your strobes to create something like day to night. We have another question, Steffi.
How much of what you are doing today would be different based on the model you may have?
Absolutely nothing. The techniques are exactly the same for every model. So, but with Louisiana we can do some stuff because he has longer hair and really curly hair, like the Brian May coupe I always know, Brian May, Queen guitarist. Really cool guy. Anyway, so the model doesn't matter for digital classroom. Of course you choose different lighting setups or different moves for different models. For example, with Nadine we always do a little bit more extreme. With Louisiana we would do a little bit more like fashion-y or portrait or beauty. And with Puka we also go more like cosplay or LARPing. So it depends on the model, but for the techniques explained today, everything works. So how can we make her a little bit less hot? Now we have to dive into... Don't. You don't hear her laughing, right? We have to dive into the menu here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to channel A. And you can't see it here, but what I'm doing is I'm using something called flash exposure compensation. It's the same exposure compensation, but now it works on the flash. So let's say we're going to do 1/3 of a stop less. Okay. And now we get the problem of ETTL, because as you can see, it works a little bit, but it's still not perfect. And that's very simply explained. The problem is, my camera will try very, very differently sorry, very, very hard to get everything 18% gray. You can see that there's a lot of black. So I'm even going lower now. I'm really pushing it down. And now finally it works. But it's not perfect. You see that this is way too dark. Okay, so let's open that up. There we go. This is better. Now for all you guys that tell me, and there are a lot of guys that tell me this all the time, Frank, using a light meter is cool, but it takes so much time. You see how much time this took? If I just put it on manual mode and just meter, that will be way easier. When is ETTL better? If you move around your model and your lights a lot. And that's what I'm going to do now. I love this shot. It's really nice. Gonna take one more. Really nice. Love it. Cool. Don't destroy my studio. Nice. So I really like a little bit more of the posy side, so a little bit more different in her posing, so I really like this. Maybe do that one again and then look into the light. Nice. So I love that more dense moves, that a little bit more like that. And we didn't talk about this. Louisanna came in, we were checking the whole Facebook, YouTube live thing, so I didn't have time to talk to her. And she's just a great model, she just does it by herself. You rock. So what we're now going to do is we're going to use light from the siding, from the side. Hey, I'm Dutch. Sometimes I misspeak something. So let's move the light all the way over here. Change it like this. And this is one of the main things I love about ETTL. I don't have to remeter this. Very nice. And I'm going to shoot from here, of course. I know, guys. This is not correct. So I'm going to shoot from that side and you see a totally different shot. Actually not. And you know why? I didn't change the angle of light. If you want to have higher contrast, you have to change the angle of light. And sometimes the angle of light is not the angle of light, it's actually where you're standing as a photographer. Because if I stand on the same location as I did before, you will immediately see that now the angle of light is totally different. And you can also see that ETTL messes up again. This is too hot. This is actually a little bit too dark. I still like it on her face though. I think it's a pretty cool shot. The only thing is I want a little bit more light on the bottom. As you can see, the light is actually aimed like this, meaning her face will be lit by this part and her body by that part. Can I solve that? Yes, very simple. What you can do is you can lower your strobe just a little bit. There we go. And change the angle up. There we go. Place it a little bit closer, aim it a little bit down, move it a little bit away. What I'm now trying to do is my model has to be lit by the top, her chest by this area, and here we have some light fall off on her arms, which gives me a great shot. Anna, you have a question?
So you never so you never use ETTL. So when you use ETL, you never meter the light.
Okay, when I use the question is, if you use ETTL, do you meter the light? You can't. For the very simple reason, it's ETTL. You can't meter the light from ETTL because the camera will calculate together with the strobe what they do. It's like Harry Potter magic in a camera. When you use a light meter, you actually tell your lights, go off at this setting. That's something you can meter. ETTL you can never meter. And it wouldn't make any sense to meter it for the very simple reason. If I now have a light meter, it's not the camera. It doesn't see what the camera does. So no, you can't meter ETTL. What you can meter is manual mode, but we're not using that at the moment. We're going to use that after this. Really nice. There we go. So this is better. So now you can see a little bit more of her body. Really like that. But I have to sit down a little bit more to get more dramatic shots. Steffi, you have a question. And Steffi is the one with the microphone.
It's from Facebook. What is your favorite small flash?
Okay, what is my favorite small flash? Oh, I don't have to repeat the question because you're online. I think at the moment the Photics, without any doubt, and therefore Canon, Nikon and Sony. And why the Mitros Plus? It has the transmitter, the receiver inside. So it means you can change the receiver to the Odin system, which I'm using on the Sony, the Odin 2. But you can also use Strata or any other system that's inside there. I don't know which ones are in there because I only use Strata and Odin 2. And because it has the transmitter and receiver inside, I don't have to carry around extra gear or batteries. So I use 4 batteries per strobe, and it also powers my transmitter and receiver, of course. Don't know why I keep saying transmitter too. It's a receiver. And it's a very lightweight strobe, and it gives a lot of power. Anouk also has a question.
Another one on Facebook Live.
Okay, Anouk, what's the question?
While shooting TTL with speed light, focal length of lens is automatically assigned to flash, or I need to change it manually?
Okay, when shooting ETTL with strobes, is the length of the lens calculated? I'm using off-camera strobe, so I can zoom myself via the remote control. If you're shooting on camera, it will calculate the length of the lens. And the reason is very simple. If you're shooting 24mm, you need a field of view like this. So the strobe has to light that whole area. If you're shooting 200, or 135 is actually the max for most, you have a very narrow narrow field of view. So it wouldn't make any sense for the strobe to actually light beside that area. So what it does, it will zoom. You can hear that actually in your strobe. I remember a story, by the way, from a local camera store. They got some people who brought their strobes back and they said, this strobe is broken. And they said, why? Now listen to this. They told the guys, they put it on the camera and they started doing this here. And inside the strobe you could hear. So they said the strobe makes noise. What it actually does, it's not broken. It zooms inside to make sure that you have the narrow field of view. Okay, Anouk, can you give me my chair? So I'm gonna sit on a lower angle. That's not so smart. I'm gonna sit on a lower angle. Gonna zoom in a little bit, not that low, Anouk. There we go. Look at my eyes. Yeah, sure. Okay, gonna sit down, lower angle, look a little bit that way. Very nice. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more. Okay, now you can see that we have a totally different look. So shooting up from a model, I don't like it that much. I like it a little bit more like this. And as you can see, we still need a little bit more flash exposure compensation. Nice. This is better. Now watch out for those shadows, because the shadows can be a little bit nasty in her face. So what I have to do, I have to tell my model, look a little bit more that way. That's really nice. Nose a little bit more up. That's great. Now I have a little bit of a nose shadow, which I actually like. That's much better. And I need again to change my, there you go, flash exposure compensation. So you're constantly doing this. And of course you can do it later in Photoshop, Lightroom or Capture One. But I like to do it on set. That was not part of the show. I hope my seat still works after this one.
It's on the brakes, I guess.
It's on. There are no brakes, so it can't be on the brakes, my dear. So anyway, so yeah, it still works. We now have 3 people laughing at me. I don't like when people laugh at me, so you guys don't laugh. I don't know what's going on. I know it still works. So let's change to here. So now I changed my composition totally. Can you stand against the wall, please? And look down all the way. Very, very, yes. Oh, love that. Chin up just a little bit. Nice. And now you get that really high contrast look that I really love to use, because this is something that really gives power to your shot. Okay, do it again. That's really cool. And because the light is actually on top of my model, I don't have any problem with it appearing in the shot, and otherwise I can just crop it out. Ooh, that's really nice. Cool, chin up just a little bit so your eyes catch the light. That's nice. Awesome, so now I have more contrast, so of course I can go back again here and do it from this angle. Nice. Really cool. So this is a very simple way, just move around your model using small strobes, and as you can see I have a really narrow beam of light. I like it a little bit more narrow. Don't you guys agree? Maybe a little bit narrower. And that can be done by using a snoot. So we're going to change that very quickly, but before I'm going to do that, I have to shoot this little baby. This is a color checker passport. Very, very important. I use Capture One where it isn't supported, so I only use it for white balance. But if you have Lightroom, you can create custom profiles with this one. It's very easy done by the software that's delivered with it. And it really makes a huge difference in your in your color accuracy. Accuracy? Accuracy. whatever. It makes the colors look better. So the model has to hold it in front of her face, make sure that she doesn't cover any of the squares, hold it flat to the light. And there's one problem. You have to make a funny face, otherwise it won't work. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. One day I'm gonna release a book, The Funny Faces of the Color Checker, without any doubt. And she's gonna be on the cover. It's awesome. Okay, we have another question in between.
Yes, it's about the grid on the flash bender.
Okay, it's about the grid on the flash bender.
When you remove it, will you get more light on the background, or will it also give a different exposure?
Okay, when I remove the grid, will it give more light on the background? Yes, it will, of course, because there's no light steering anymore. It just removes the grid, so you get a wider beam of light. The thing is, if you remove it, you also lose that nice quality of light where it's really directional. It depends on your personal taste. I like it a little bit more directional. That's also why I'm going to use this one. Another question?
If your room was darker, would you increase the ISO to bring out more of the ambient light?
Okay, if my room was darker, would I increase the ISO to get more ambient light? No. I'm not using ambient light at the moment. I'm only using strobe. That's when we started. We actually shot one base image to make sure that there was no ambient light in the shot. After that, we started adding strobes, so meaning we only use strobes. So I can raise my ISO, but that only means that I get more depth of field because the strobe will adjust for the aperture I chose and the shutter speed. So if the ISO is higher, it will go actually to more or less power. Depending on if the ISO goes lower, it will need more power. If the ISO gets higher, it will use less power. Now you can start changing your aperture to correct this, of course, to change your depth of field. So if you go ISO 100, you can shoot on 2.8. If you shoot on ISO 200, you have to go to f4. The thing is, because we're using ETTL, it doesn't matter what you do, it will still calculate it. As long as you have that flash exposure compensation locked in, you can now, without any doubt, change your ISO, you can change your aperture, you can do whatever you want, and the camera will calculate it correctly. That's one of the main advantages of ETTL. Steffi, you have also a question.
Maybe a bit off topic. I'd like to do a shooting outside during rain or snowfall, and would like to use my Quadra and the Beauty disc with the grid. Do you have any tips for this?
Okay, if you want to shoot in bad weather, really bad weather, there's actually a book written by two friends of mine, Lindsay Adler and Eric Vallant. It's called How to Shoot in Crappy Weather, where they actually had the question, shitty weather, I believe. It's shitty weather. And it's a really cool book if you want to shoot outside. Now, if you want to shoot outside, my advice is very simple. Take an intern to handle your Quadras and Rangers, because literally it's a lot of power, it's a lot of electricity. Don't touch it yourself. Just take somebody you don't like, your mother-in-law or an intern or anybody that has insurance, and let them handle it. This, of course, is a joke. Don't blame me for a joke. So what you have to do is make sure that what you use outside is totally waterproof. And I know from the Ranger that it's actually waterproof until it hits a certain mark, but please look that up in your manual. And don't change heads during a rainfall. We tried it once with a Quadra by accident and it literally blew up, and you don't want to see that. So, but as long as we kept everything connected and closed up, it should be fine with just a little bit of snow or a little bit of rain. Don't go out in the pouring rain because, you know, sometimes people tell you it should be possible. It's a lot of expensive equipment. Don't even take the chance, so just don't. And if you want to do it with a little bit of rain, don't worry. Just make sure that you don't change anything during rainfall, that it gets wet. So assemble it in the car, make sure you choose the proper channel. So the channel for a lot of power or the channel for a little bit of power if you use an asynchronous head. And at that time, make sure that everything is locked down and then go outside and take the shots. Another question.
The last one. If you do a setup with two flashes, for example, both the flash bender and the snoot, how do you make both flashes go off at the same time?
Okay, how do we make sure that both flashes go off at the same time? Very simple, that's what the Odin 2 does. So both flashes are actually connected to the Odin 2, which means that as soon as I press the shutter, at that moment it will send a signal to both strobes and both strobes will fire, just the same as in the studio. And if you don't have, for example, two transmitters, You can also use something called an optical slave. Optical slave means as soon as it sees boom, like a small exposure change, it will actually trigger the strobe. In the studio you can have those, and of course outside too. There's also systems that have a line of sight. That's actually the original system, for example, from Nikon. Creative lighting, I believe it's called. And that's where you actually use a trigger on the camera by using a little pulse of light. And that works great in dark spaces, and outside you have to make sure that they really see each other, otherwise it won't work. So I like radio triggers a lot more because they also transmit ETTL much easier in the bright sun. So both strobes will go off as soon as you fire if you use the proper transmitter and receivers. And of course you do, because hey, how can you otherwise make your strobes go off? Okay, so let's see. Can you look through the grid? No, right? It's black.
It's no, I can't.
You can't. Okay, let me change this a little bit more up.
Yeah, I will. So this is good.
This is better?
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is very close to my model, so I have to see if this actually works. So let's turn this on. Looks nice. Okay, this is a snoot, meaning it will really channel my light towards my model. So let me change the aperture to f4, because it takes also a lot of light. There we go. And we love ETTL, don't we? Yep. That's a lot of light. Okay, let's switch this one to manual, because I want to make sure that everything goes right. Okay. So we're going to go to mode, manual, and let's go down to 1/64. And now I'm going to show you why it helps to shoot with a light meter. Okay, still way overexposed. Okay, so let's go down. To 128th. And then by accident I remember something. This is very important for you guys. If you use stuff like this, make sure you are on the right setting. Odin. There we go. Okay, let's try this. Okay, that's better. Okay, let's change the power. Okay. As you can see, I'm trying this out as we go, and this doesn't make you look professional in front of your client, because yeah, it's almost there, no it's not there, no it's almost there, a little bit less, a little bit more. Now when you take out your light meter, you just pick it up. It's very simple. Now I need Anouk to help me out with this. And normally of course you use a second, oh wait a minute, I can do this probably by myself. Okay, hold this in front of your face. The only thing I now have to do is actually press my test button. So that's that one. Now as soon as the first one goes, you have to press this button. There we go. Oh. Anouk, can you help me out for a second? I'm going to tell you in a moment why this looks so awkward. Okay, as soon as I say yes, you press the red button. Yes? There we go. F4.01, meaning if I shoot this on F4, it should be great. Now why did it work as soon as Anouk helped me? There is something with the photic system that literally bugged me when it started coming out, and they changed it for me. They tell me they changed it for me, but it was actually my idea. Normally when you shoot with small strobes and you press the test button, it will go off in the setting you set it on. So for example, if you shoot manual mode, full power, it will fire on full power. If you shoot manual mode half power, it will shoot on half power. The photic system didn't work that way. If you pressed the test button, what it will actually do is will just go through all your strobes. Are you awake? Are you awake? So make a little bit of a flash. And was maybe on 1/64th on power. So I said, okay, if I want to use a light meter, that doesn't work because it only gives me a small strobe. So what they actually did is they created something that has a little bit of a delay. So the first time I press this, if you look very closely, you can see it gives a small flash. That's actually the I'm awake flash. And then it will shoot on the power that my manual mode is set. So when I was standing here with my camera in one hand and the light meter, I couldn't ignore the first strobe and then press the button for the second one. As soon as Anoweek helped, it's very simple. I see the first one, I press the button and I get the correct reading. So I need to be on F4, so now set the camera on F4. Very nice. That's cool. Look straight into the light. Nice. That's cool. And you have to be a little bit more careful with your composition with this kind of stuff, because I like this, but it's a little bit too dark for me around the model. So I have to zoom in a little bit more. Normally I like to show a little bit of the wall. That's pretty cool because we like the walls. But in this case, don't go too close, because a lot of people will do this with a portrait. And that's okay, but it doesn't make any sense why I used this light source. Actually, it makes it look a little bit weird because the light fall off isn't exactly on her face. So let's change that just a little bit. There we go. Let's change this a little bit up. Okay. So if I do it really close on my model, that's better. Let's change that a little bit here. Nice. Okay, so your light placement is very important because we don't have a modeling light. So here we have it straight on her face. But it doesn't really make any sense lighting-wise. It looks a little bit weird for me. I like it, but it looks a little bit weird. Now, if you zoom out just a little bit and show a little bit more of the surrounding area, the lighting setup looks way more interesting. And depending on how the model poses, I will choose my composition. And I like to place her all the way to the side of the frame. That looks pretty cool. Okay, we're gonna do some retouching on these images, and after that we're gonna do a setup with full body and some funky stuff. So don't go away. I'm gonna walk to my computer and we're gonna do the retouching part of this set. And after that, we're gonna do the rest. So there was another question, Anoweek, in between?
Yes, but I didn't completely understand it. Why are they doing two flash triggers anyway? I think it's
Okay.
for
The question about photics is, why do they do those two triggers, those two flashes at the same time? I can't tell you, I don't know. For me it doesn't make any sense. It's however how the system originally worked. So I think they just added that delay with the power you set, and they never took away that other part. So I don't know. It's pretty workable. It works great, to be honest. And as soon as you know it, you can work around it, and it's no problem at all. It's like, it's not like anything else actually. I don't know how to explain this, but in reality it works pretty well. So don't worry about it. It works. Another question, Anoweek.
That's an interesting one. Is it possible to mix small flash with studio lights?
Okay, the question is it possible to mix small flash with studio lights? Yes, it is. You can use your studio strobes, like the Allengrams. They have something called intelligent flash. I don't know the exact name of it, but what it does is it looks at the pre-flash, and then it times the strobe to go off after the pre-flash, because every small strobe, speedlights, have a pre-flash in which they meter and then they go off. Even on manual mode, some Nikons will actually do this, and that really messes up light metering. And you can disconnect that. So if you want it, yes, it can. And you can use studio strobes on optical triggers. So you use your small flash as you used to, and use the optical slave on your big flash. And as soon as the small flash fires, the big flash will fire. If you're shooting ETTL and you have that pre-flash, some strobes, especially with the Allengrams I know for sure, they have a system that learns the pre-flash and the main flash. So in other words, you learn that once and it will ignore the pre-flash and it will fire on the main flash. Can you do it the other way around? So use small flash in combination with your studio strobes? You can do that too. But then you have to have an adapter, and I don't know the name of the brand. I'm so sorry for this, guys. This is live and I don't know the answer to all your questions. I know there's an adapter from a certain brand that actually has an optical unit inside. So it looks like a normal hot shoe converter, but it has a little bit of an eye. And that is an optical trigger, and it will just send a signal to your strobes, a fire. Because you have to realize that although strobes look very, very intimidating because they have all these connectors, in essence what they need is only one very simple plug. So if you look at the old cameras, there was only one contact point. The old strobes only worked on manual mode. So in other words, there was this one little connector, you put it on top of each other exactly like this, and as soon as there was condition between those two, power, the strobe went off. Now later, of course, you got stuff like ETTL, so now you need all the other connections. So if you use that converter with that optical slave, it's just a very simple connecting. It gives power to the strobe and the strobe will fire. So it works both ways. And with the Lume Cubes, you can do even funnier stuff. And we're going to do that in a next episode, not the next probably, but maybe the one after that, where we're going to show you how you can combine Lume Cubes with studio strobes, because they also have that optical slave. But now we're going to do some retouching. Or do you have one more question, Annemiek?
Yeah, it's also an interesting one. Frank, is the shadow good on the wall, or do we need to bring the model away from the wall?
Okay, do I like the shadow on the wall, or do we need to take the model away from the wall? This is very, very personal. I like the shadow on the wall, but I can imagine if you don't like the shadow on the wall, move your model away and aim your light higher. Because if you aim your light higher, the shadow will fall lower. If you shoot from a lower angle up, you can actually shoot without shadows on the wall. But for me, it makes the connection to the wall. So otherwise it could be just a model that's photoshopped in front of a wall. So I love that connection with the shadows. Okay, now I really have to go to the computer and we remember that question, because as soon as I sit down, I will answer that question. But first, let's go here and give our model time to change her clothing. And let me change to my other camera. Okay, guys. So Annemiek, what was the question?
To get a high fashion shot with the snoot, you just have to get a different position yourself?
Okay, to get a high fashion shot with the snoot, you just have to get to a different... I don't know what a high fashion shot is, to be honest. I think high fashion is... I really don't know. High fashion, some people tell that if you shoot something that looks like a catwalk, it's high fashion. Some people say if you combine reportage with fashion, it's high fashion. I don't get that connection. So you have to look at what kind of shot do you want to take. If you need something where the whole body is lit, don't go for a snoot or move it all the way to the back. If you need something where you really want to pinpoint her face and want her body in shadows, use two strobes. One snoot on her face, and for example, you can use a strip light or a softbox like 3-4 stops lower and light the rest of her face. The rest of her body. And that way you can get, I always call that light in light. So you can really get some cool effects from that. If you want, we can show that in another episode, of course. That's no problem at all. And for now, before we switch to our retouching, I have to prepare some stuff, and that's when it's time to show you guys a commercial. I know you hate commercials, but remember, the guys we show you the commercials from actually make this possible, and it gives me time to catch my breath for a little while and also prepare the Photoshop part. So we really need that break a little bit. So here we go. And this is actually about the monitor that I'm using at the moment. I'm going to show you that in a second. And this is about the BenQ. Hey guys, my name is Frank Dorff, and I want to tell you today about the new 27-inch monitor from BenQ. Now, I'm a fashion photographer, and I like my colors to be as they are in real life. Because I do my best to light my scene correctly, to style the scene, to have great makeup, great model. And then I see my images on a monitor and they look like, well, very dull. Well, that can happen to you too, and it will probably happen to you. You know the problem? Your monitor is not up to spec. Now, a monitor isn't a monitor. It's not something that just shows you the image. There are many different kinds of monitors. Like TV sets, your very expensive ones, which will give you better image quality, right? Now, with computer monitors, we always tell people it's all about the color space. For example, you have an sRGB monitor, or for the professionals, an Adobe RGB monitor. But if you don't know what that means, it doesn't make any sense. Now, let me make it simple. These are the colors in real life. So this is what you capture, right? It's great, it's vibrant, it's saturated, it's real life. Now, an sRGB monitor, it's really small color space. And that's okay for the web or for a laptop or just simply browsing your images. But if you want those more vibrant colors, you need something a little bit bigger. And that's an Adobe RGB color space. It's just a bigger color space. But it also means that the monitor has to show those colors. Now, in the past, those monitors were pretty expensive, especially a 27-inch. And BenQ really, really made me enthusiastic about this monitor because it's very affordable. It's delivered with a hood. So in other words, it will cut down on your glare. And it's, well, I can give you all the bells and whistles about it. Like, it has all the inputs you need. It has all the specs. It's 99% Adobe RGB. But in the end, it all boils down to one thing: image quality. And I'm very picky. And as you can see, it's my main editing monitor at the moment. So I'm very, very enthusiastic about the monitor. If you are looking for a great monitor and you want something in the 27-inch, and you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on it, check out the new BenQ 27-inch. And for me, the most important thing is that it has a hardware calibration option, meaning you use their own software and you use a calibrator, and you can really make sure that the reds are as red as they are intended. Now, I know a lot of monitors come with this sheet, like, I'm calibrated in the factory. That's great, but it doesn't make any sense because your computer is different. So you have to recalibrate. Now, when do you recalibrate? I always recalibrate before a very important retouch session. For example, if I have to do a wedding or a fashion shoot, I will just let my monitor warm up for half an hour or an hour, do the calibration, and then I do my retouching. That way, I know for sure that my colors are accurate. So BenQ, job well done. I'm very, very happy with the monitor. And you guys, if you're in the market for a new monitor, check out the new BenQ series because they're really knocking one out of the ballpark with this series. Okay, and we're back. Hey guys. Now, I see a lot of questions on the chat like, okay, I would be interested in a high fashion shot, and some other people who go like, okay, what is high fashion? As I explained before, I don't have a clue what high fashion is, guys. I'm very sorry. I am a fashion photographer, meaning I shoot stuff that has something to do with clothing. But I think that everything that's put in a box is not the correct way to approach photography nowadays, because there's so many crossovers, and if somebody shows me an example of a high fashion shot, I can probably figure out what they mean and I can do something that's similar to that. But just throwing out the term high fashion, I don't have a clue. I'm very sorry. Okay, so my setup for retouching, I want to show you that. Now, you previously saw the advert for the BenQ 27-inch. That's the monitor I'm using at the moment, but my setup is a little bit different. Now, I'm going to pick this one up. That's so cool because it's a webcam. As you can see here, I'm using a Wacom Cintiq to do my retouching, and of course now there's some flare from one of the panels, but that's no problem. And in the back you can see that I'm actually using the BenQ. And the reason for this is very simple. The Wacom is a great tablet for retouching, works like a charm, it's awesome. But if I look at shadow detail and actually color, I think the BenQ is just a hinge better. And because I like to be on the edge of contrast, and also with color I like to do a lot of tinting, and I'm very, very secure about that, I think that it's better to use the BenQ as my main monitor to check. But I wouldn't want to trade the Wacom in for anything because I absolutely love it. Okay, so let's go to my Mac so you can actually see what I'm doing. There we go. So this is the full screen. And I'm going to show you some very simple tricks. The first thing is, I love this shot, but I love this one more. So I'm going to give this one 5 stars. Now normally, of course, you go through all your images, and I'm just going to select a few. And be sure to kill your babies. In other words, remove the shots that you really don't like and never going to use, because your hard drive will fill up. So if you know we're not going to use these, remove them. Okay, so I don't like the shadows here, don't like the shadows here, a little bit too hot, don't like the pose, don't like the pose, too dark. This one is okay, but it looks a little bit weird because of the angle, but I'm still going to keep that one. Too much of a smile, love this one. This one is great. This one is a little bit distorted due to the wide angle, a little bit too dark. And of course you can open it up in Photoshop, but I'm more like, you know, I like to do it a little bit more like, if the lighting is right, don't change it. I don't like the pose here, same here. I like a little bit more light on her eyes. Love this one, really great shot. Okay, this is too much with the arms. If you can see here, there's a lot of arms in the frame, and I like to have the attention on the model's face. So I'm not gonna retouch that one. Too dark on her face and too light on her arm. Don't like the pose. It's okay. Okay, no. That's awesome. Okay, let's remove this one. By the way, it is probably savable by just changing your. It's not. Make it black and white. This is an inside joke, by the way. If you really mess up a shot, make it black and white, add a lot of contrast and noise, and you have instant art, as you can see here. So if you really mess up a shot, but the exposure was wrong, but you really love the shot, and you go like, oh my, I just wish, just make it black and white, as you can see here, and it still doesn't look right, but it's a lot better. Okay, so remove these. Too dark. No, don't like the pose. Don't like the pose. No, no. As you can see, I'm really strict in what I delete. I really only want the best shots, and that's not just for myself, but also for the model. The model doesn't want to have shots that are okay. The model wants shots that are great. Okay, so let's do a color balance. In Capture One, we just do that by clicking here. Okay, color balance is correct. Now the only thing I have to do is copy it to all the other shots, and only the ones I have to retouch, but let's do it quick. Copy and apply. There we go. Awesome. And we have these two shots left. Okay. Let's see what we can do. Now in the raw converter, I don't want to change anything. I'm a little bit hesitant, for example, to use shadows. A lot of people will do this, just open up the shadows a little bit, but it will destroy the look that I liked. So I actually want to use it like this. Now some people also say like, okay, her skin tone, isn't it better if you just click on the back? And as you can see here, my walls are actually pretty good gray, because if I use the wall set gray balance, there's actually hardly any difference. But as you can see here, when the light falls off and I click on different points, you get different color balances. So make sure you use that color checker. Even if you can't create a profile, it's still very important for color balance. And if you need that profile in the future, you can still use Lightroom and create that profile. Okay, so let's go to Photoshop. And this is the first shot I want to do. Okay, so in Capture One, we create a recipe called Frank to Photoshop. We use a TIFF uncompressed Pro Photo, and we open up Adobe Photoshop. And the only thing I now have to do is press a button on my remote from the Wacom, and it will open up Photoshop. Let me see, somebody asked me, okay, if you want to see high fashion shots, go look at Lindsay Adler's photos. You know that Lindsay actually doesn't call her own shots high fashion. She more calls it concepts and fashion and beauty, I believe. I don't know for sure. Okay, another question is the color checker still important if you do coloring after the retouch? Yes, 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 incredibly important. Because if your base is, let me change to this one because that one has more impact so you can see what I'm doing. Yes, 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 very, very important. Because if you have your base correctly, what you can actually do is run the same program over and over again. Let's say alien skin exposure. You have a certain look that you like, you can run it over and over again, and because your base is exactly the same, it will look the same. If you don't use a color checker and you just go like, well, we'll see, then the base is different, and every time you run a filter, it will have a different impact on your shots. So yes, always use that color checker. Okay, let's go back. Let me see, another one, let me see the question. Now in retouch you have a lot of shots where I hear you say don't like the pose, but you didn't really coach the model. Could have that been better? Okay, let me change back to this one again, sorry guys. That's the cool thing about Digital Classroom, you know, it's an interactive workshop. If I wasn't teaching you guys, I would have coached the model way better. I would have said a little bit more this, a little bit more that. That means that now I delete like 70% of the images. If I normally coach a model, I will delete maybe 50% of the images, or 40 or 20. The thing is, don't do this. Go a little bit more to the left. Little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. Stop. Tilt your head like this. This. Stop. Do this. No, stop. Okay, move. This is very, very frustrating for the model. You have to find a certain flow, like, okay, move it a little bit more to the left, and just take some shots in between. Because if you keep that flow going of shots, the model knows he's doing great, he's doing fine. So at that point, you get some really cool shots. But if you start going like, okay, a little bit more like this, and you don't shoot straight away, you will have a big problem because the model will actually get very, very insecure. So yes, you delete a lot of shots. With film, you sometimes have to shoot a lot, and that costs a lot of money. And some people are actually more in the standard posing, like doing it really relaxed and coaching the model into every set. I don't do that. I just go with the flow and let the model move. And when I'm teaching, like today, I don't have a lot of time to coach the model because I'm talking to you guys. But normally in the shoot, I will literally talk till her ears bleed. That's the God honest truth. Let's hope it keeps working, guys. And to be totally honest, I never had so much trouble during a digital classroom broadcast. Now, normally we do have some glitches, which you guys normally don't see, like it's starting to rain and we have to move inside, or we have a tether cable that comes loose. But this is really the worst digital classroom ever in technique-wise. This is also, by the way, why I want to ask you guys something. We are gonna switch everything over in the next week. If you look at the behind the closed doors tonight, that's where you can actually see what we're gonna do. But what are we gonna do? First off, we're now using 2 cameras, and at the moment we're only using 1 because we don't want to mess up everything here, because we don't know if it's the software or something else. So we're going to switch to 1 camera, and of course the inside switching. Okay, so what we're going to do with Digital Classroom? We ordered some new cameras, which are actually already in. So we're going to use 4 different cameras for Digital Classroom instead of the 2 we're using now. And we're going to use a switcher, meaning we don't have to use software anymore for the switching. We're actually going to do that with a hardware switch from Roland. So that's going to be pretty good. But we really appreciate it if you guys would help us out for that. And of course, we're going to give you something back in return. So let me switch to another camera point for you guys, because now you only see my screen. So the camera we're using now is actually the webcam. And we're going to switch that over for a better camera so you can see me better and we can change the exposure. I just realized that you were still seeing my screen. Sorry for that, guys. And we're going to use that Roland switcher. Now you see here something. It's called www.patreon.com/Frank Doorhoff. And one of the things we love to do is keep this stuff free for you guys. Totally free of charge. You don't have to pay anything for it. And we want to keep it that way. We're not going to switch to YouTube Red or whatever. This is a free program. If you go to the Patreon website, you can support the work that we do. See it as a tip bar where you can actually say, okay, Frank, I like what you do. We're going to support you. Now, what are we going to do with the support? We're going to buy that extra camera set, which we already ordered, by the way, and we're going to buy that switcher. So it's going to go straight into Digital Classroom and the stuff that we do. The other thing that we do for you is we have a closed Facebook group where you can ask questions, where you can get a portfolio review, where you can interact with each other, show images, you get the news first. And one of the coolest thing, you can ask questions, which I will actually incorporate into, quite frankly, behind the closed doors or in Digital Classroom. And there's more. If you go to Patreon, you can see all the options. I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's really important for us that you guys support us on Patreon, because that's what makes it possible. We do a lot of investments for Digital Classroom. We do have sponsors, of course, BenQ and Rogue, but the stuff we want to do, we need more sponsors and a little bit of support, of course, from you guys. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so the 1.5 meter Octa, that's a really big softbox. This is a softbox that I normally don't use that much. And a week is getting me seasick with the camera.
I just want to show the...
Okay, so this is the 1.5 meter Octa. Really great directional lighting, and it just gives a really flattering light quality. So I'm going to ask my model, can you please stand on the stage, on the paper. That kind of technical stuff really messes me up, guys, so I'm very sorry for that. The thing we have to do, of course, is meter the light, because we don't use ETTL at the moment. We're gonna meter it. So, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good.
Me too now that everything works again. Okay, let me see. Okay, so I got a meter reading of F8.03. I'm gonna come really close so you guys can see. Annemiek, is it in the frame?
Yeah.
F8.03. Now on the camera, your camera works in 1/3 of an f-stop, meaning your lighting works in 1/10. The light meter is set on full f-stops, meaning it will show you F8 and then it will show you F11. But in between it will show you tenths of f-stop. For example, f8.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that correlates to your camera. So if you have f8.0, that's f8. If you have f8.02, that means that you're very close to f9, because that's f8.03. But you can also go down 2 clicks to make sure that you're on, there you go, f8. So in this case, f9, let's just keep it on f9. I don't want to mess anything up. So, Luisana, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So let's first take a normal shot. So I'm going to go to f9, 125th of a second. Okay, there we go. Very simple shot. Awesome. And as soon as you see the shot coming in, you go like, Frank, really? Do you like that? No, of course not. I don't like that at all. I'm so sorry for the camera wobble, by the way, guys, but Anouk is trying to get the best angles, and we're only doing this with one camera. Next time, everything will be better. What I have to do, and that's going to be really difficult on Anouk, I'm going to move all the way back, because I want to make sure that Luisana is on the screen. And I don't mean on the screen, on the paper. The thing is, if I shoot close, I can never shoot her full body. For the very simple reason, if I use a wide angle and I move all the way to the back, I can fit her on the screen. Remember that angle of view we talked about with ETTL and zooming? That also works for this kind of stuff. So if I shoot 24mm, all the sides will be shown. Now if I move all the way to the back, which I'm going to do now, and Anouk is following me, and I zoom in, I can actually come a little bit closer. There we go. There we go. And now I can fit her on the screen, which in previous setups I couldn't. So I'm going to help Anouk for one moment. So now you can move it around a little bit easier. There we go. So I can move around a little bit more to the front or a little bit more to the back, depending on how much of the background I want in. But I also want a lower angle. So in this case, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to shoot from a lower angle. But the first thing I have to solve is something that's a little bit more urgent. The background shadow. You see that? That's really ugly. A lot of people ask me about that. Like, how can you remove shadows? You can do it in Photoshop, but you have to clone it, and it's a mess. It doesn't work. So what you have to do is remember angle of shooting and angle of light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change my angle of light to make sure that there's no more spill on the background. So I'm going to take my... Oh! Okay. Just put it up. It's a let go. It can take it. You see, it's that kind of day. So we're going to change the lighting from the side, and I must make sure that the light doesn't hit my model. So you can still see a shadow. So I want my model to come forward. There we go. And remember, there always will be a shadow for the very simple reason you're using lighting. So let's change this. There we go. Now this looks way better because now the shadow is actually on the side of my model. Now this is a little bit too much from the side. So let's change this and keep looking at the lighting while they try to fix my studio. There we go. I like the light if it falls away almost to the background. So I'm going to turn this because I also want the background to be lit. So if I do stuff like this, the background is dark. If I move it like this, the background will be lit. So we're going to experiment with that a little bit. Okay, let's take the light meter. You shouldn't take it all apart. It did work when it fell down, so just put it on. It will work. Okay, there we go. 16.1. Now that's a huge difference, and that's because I moved my light way closer to my model. And if you move your light closer to the model, it will actually give you more power. So let's work with this. F16. Okay, so let's take the camera, choose a lower angle to shoot, and slightly more different distance. There we go. Okay, are you ready? There we go. So now we have more shadow on the model's face. Let me see. In the broadcast, Steffi, is it now on Capture One and me? Okay, let's check that very simply. Okay, let's do that again. Very nice. Was it on capture one or just me? Now it is. Okay, cool. Sorry guys, we are really messing up today. I hope you can forgive me for this. And if you can't, don't worry, we're gonna do it again better next time. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit more closer. There we go. Really nice. And you see what Louisiana already is doing? She's adding motion to her shots. And by adding motion to a shot, you actually make a shot more interesting. So let's try some other stuff. I'm gonna open up a little bit to give a little bit more of an overexposed look, which I like for this kind of stuff. And I'm gonna ask her to twirl like she did now. 1, 2, 3, go. Really nice. But you know, movement can be incredibly cool, but also a little bit difficult. So what we're going to do is we're not going to make the model jump because she's actually wearing heels, but we're going to make her jump. Just a little bit. So as soon as I say yes, can you just jump out just a little bit? Just like that, yes. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Nice. Now, of course, you have to coach your model. You have to tell your model, okay, keep that expression, do this, do that, and make it a little bit more flashy. But make sure that you coach the model correctly. Don't let her do stuff that she can't. So what I want you to do is relax your face, jump all the way up. As soon as you're on the point there, you just twirl around, do a double salto backwards, end with a handstand, take off your shoes in the air, put them on your nose, and then do the rest. So don't make it too difficult. Okay, just a little bit of a jump and look straight into the light while you're jumping. 1, 2, 3, go. Nice. Now open up your mouth just a little bit while you jump. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, try to keep your arms in your side. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, now close your mouth very violently. Term. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, as you can see, she's wearing high heels, but she can still jump. The reason for this is I don't let her jump high. I let her jump just a little bit. But the background, it's very boring, don't you agree? It's a little bit, I don't know. I just don't like it. So let's make it a little bit nicer. And how you can do that is actually by moving your light to create some kind of shadow on the background, or maybe even darker. So let's move your light to the side, like this. There we go. Do I have to remeter? Yes, of course. Yes, there's a question, Steffi?
I'm having troubles with to get the eyes in focus when the model is moving. What settings do you use for this kind of shot?
Okay, she didn't use a microphone, so I have to repeat the question. When the model jumps, I have problem keeping the eyes in focus and sharp. That's 100% true. Am I correctly in the frame and a week? Yeah? Okay. So when the model jumps, I have problem keeping the focus on her eyes. That's absolutely true. That's why we're shooting on f16. I started out with f9, but as soon as I started adding that motion, I started shooting f16 for the very simple reason, if I shoot f16, I have a lot of movement. I have a lot of room for movement. So keep that aperture closed down. f16, f22, f16.3 in this case, so we're going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's remeter. There we go. Now I have a remote control inside the light meter. That's why I can press two buttons, one for up, one for down. So don't start shouting at your strobes at home. It won't work. You need that remote control. Okay, so we're still on f16 and now I changed the total light on the background. So let's try this. Okay, really nice. First, don't jump, just look that way. Okay, now you can see that we have a way better quality of light. I really like this. It's really dark, but you can't see her face. So what she has to do is look straight into the light. I really want that light on her face. That's way better. Now I get a much more interesting shot. Okay, it's very, very dark, but I like the shot. And now add a little bit of motion. And when you jump, just throw around your cape like you're Batman or Superman or Supergirl or whatever. 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, that was my fault. 1, 2, 3, go. Nice. Do another one. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay. Now what you can do is just lift up one leg. So you're now shooting with both, or you're jumping with both legs extended. As soon as you jump, just one knee up and make it like this, like an angle. Yes, that's it. Are you ready?
Wait a second.
I have 2 seconds. 1, 2, 3, go. Nice. And stretch your toes. 1, 2, 3, go. Awesome. Do that one more time. You're almost there. It's great. 1, 2, 3, go. Awesome. Can you move a little bit that way while jumping? Okay, thank you. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3, go. And the final one. 1, 2, 3, go. Great. Now, of course, we want some real funky action. We want some amazing stuff. We want some stuff that we can go like, wow, that's cool. So I'm gonna ask her, do you know the Muppet Show? Mm-hmm. Do you know Animal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you move like Animal?
I don't know.
You don't know. Oh my.
Probably can, but like drumming or?
No, just move around like crazy.
I can move around like crazy.
You can move around like crazy. Okay, that's cool.
I'm crazy, so it's going to be right.
Okay, let me see on what setting the strobe is, because then I know how fast I can shoot. It's on 3.7. That means I can shoot on high shutter speed. Do you have any problems with fast strobing lights?
No, I don't think so.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm not what's it called again?
Epileptic. Okay, so there we go. Just move around, twist, jump, scream, whatever you want, but don't make any sound. Are you ready? I'm gonna zoom out a little bit, so I have to Photoshop that later. 1, 2, 3, go! She's undressing. You didn't expect that one in digital classroom, right? She's actually losing half of her clothing. So this is something that I really like to do. You have that really high sense of motion in the shots, and the thing is, the strobes can keep up because these are the ELCs from Elingram, so they're really fast. You can also put your camera on a slower speed, so for example 3 frames a second. This was, I believe, 6 frames a second. And it just depends on the model. Some models just love it a little bit slower. Some models like it when you go all out and they just move. Now 90% of these shots you can throw away straight away. For the very simple reason, they just don't look right. But there is always that one shot that's so much better than when you go 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. And that one shot, that's the one we're actually after. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna change the light one more time. And I'm actually gonna change it this way. So I'm gonna add a little bit light on the background to create like an angle of light. And we have a question, Steffi.
When the key light is on the right and you use a fill-in light as second light, you won't get a better exposure?
Okay, when the main light is over there, what I do is actually, I like that shadow side. What you can do, and we can do that another time if you want. We can add an extra accent light on that side and actually create something like a little bit of a fill. In this case, I don't want to do it because, you know, I just like that really high contrast shot that we just did. And it's dark, it's very dark, but somehow I really like that mood. So, no. Yes, another question.
What do you think about the difference between the deep octa and the beauty disc concerning control and harshness of the light?
The bigger the light source, the softer the quality of light. The smaller the light source, the harsher the quality of light. Control is the photographer. If you know what you're doing with your lighting, you can control any light source, even light bulbs. So it really, really depends on what kind of mood you want to do. Some shots I love with the beauty disc, others ones I love with that one. There is no right and wrong. It's like sometimes you need a tractor to go over a really messy field, and sometimes you need a Ferrari to go over the Autobahn. So there's no right or wrong. Actually, there is a right and wrong when you put a tractor on the Autobahn and you put a Ferrari in the field. That doesn't work. So light sources, really stop thinking about if it's right or if it's wrong. Just think about, this is the look I want, and then choose your light modifier. Don't choose your light modifier and then create something with it. Have a vision, know what you need, and then use that light source. Steffi, another question.
The last one. Can you tell me what light meter are you using?
Okay, I'm using a Psychonic 758. That's, in my opinion, the best light meter out there, and they just released a new one, which is actually pretty awesome. And I hope we're gonna get one for Christmas. So I have to look at Energy. Can I get one for Christmas? Look at Psychonic. Can I get one for Christmas? So I'm gonna test that one as soon as we have one, and I'm gonna keep you updated on that. But at the moment I use the 758, which is absolutely awesome. Okay, so we changed the lighting. Let's take one test shot very quickly because I'm running out of time. Okay, looks pretty nice. Okay, there we go. Go crazy, girl. 1, 2, 3, go. That's awesome. Okay, let's pick some of these shots out in Photoshop, and I'm going to show you what you very simply can do with your background to make it even more interesting and a little bit more clean. So I'm going to switch over to Lightroom, and we're going to retouch. And this time I hope everything stays online. Okay.
Oh, somebody is...
There we go.
the audio.
Okay, some people say audio is gone. Got some audio problems with Frank. Might sound like... Okay, sounds like what? Sound is going nuts. Okay, is sound okay now, guys? Because over here we don't see any problems with the sound. Okay, it seems like the audio is fine. Okay, great. Okay, let's switch to my Mac, but first I want to show you something that we created. You know, we create a lot with Capture One, and we actually made a video for it. And the cool thing is this video is only 15 euros. So look at this, and in the meantime, I can actually set everything up. Great shot. Hey guys, I'm Frank Dorov. I'm the writer of the best-selling book, Mastering the Model Shoot. Now, during my workshops, I get a lot of questions about people. What about raw developing? How to set my camera? Do I need Adobe RGB? Do I need sRGB? There are many questions out there. And the best thing to start with is use Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop. That's where you start. But after that, if you want a little bit more quality, if you shoot a lot of tethered setups, Capture One is actually one of the best programs out there. It isn't the best in library modes. It isn't the best in map modes. That's where we still use Lightroom. But Capture One is an awesome raw developer. Now, what is a raw developer and why is it important? Think about the old days when we had film. The choice of chemicals and the choice of film made a huge difference. The same film developed in different chemicals gave you totally different end result. The model was still the model, the landscape was still the same landscape, but you get more definition from one chemical. Or you get a little bit more detail or a little bit different colors, also depending on the process. And that actually is the same thing for the new digital sensors. A digital sensor records a raw image. There's no color space attached to a raw image, it's the raw image. You have to attach a color space yourself. This is also one of the most heard problems during, for example, social media stuff. How do I set my camera? If you shoot JPEG, choose sRGB or Adobe RGB. If you shoot RAW, it doesn't matter because the RAW file is the RAW file. There's no color profile attached. That's what you do in your RAW converter as soon as you go to JPEG or TIFF. And most workflows, of course, will be TIFF 16 bits because then you have a lot of stuff to work with and then you can use the bigger color spaces. But hey, I'm getting way ahead of this stuff. I don't want to teach you too much because this is a promo for a new video I created. Now, next to Lightroom, one of the most famous and best known RAW developers is of course Capture One. And Capture One has had a turbulent experience for me. It started when I shot medium format, I needed Capture One. And now when I shoot Sony and even when I shot Canon, I quickly found out that the raw developing of Capture One was awesome. But a lot of people have a lot of questions about how does it work? With Lightroom I know how everything works, but how does it work in Capture One? And that's why we created this video for you guys. It's a total walkthrough about how I set up Capture One to work with Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop because those are still my main programs. Capture One is used for raw developing and it does such an amazing job at that. So check out the video on Capture One raw developing workflow from me, Frank Doroff. And I'm sure if you have any questions about Capture One, they will be answered in that video. And we're back. Hey guys, so some final retouches, and this will be absolutely different than you're used to from me because it's only one light source and it's actually a jump shot, and you can see that the background was a little bit, well, used, rustic. So we're gonna solve that too. Okay, but first some questions. Is it already tethering to a laptop to, for example, let me see. Frank, a bit of question. Do you already get the Tether Tools Case Air, and have you done some more testing on it? I've done some testing on it, and it's a pretty solid solution. It tethers to your iPhone, MacBook, and whatnot. And the version I had only did RAW and JPEGs, but the final release probably will also make you an option to leave the RAWs on the card and shoot the JPEGs. But as soon as it's officially released and we have it in our hands in a final version, that's when I can tell you what it does, and I will make a video review of it too. But how it looks now, it's absolutely awesome and it works. Let me see, another question about it is, it will surely come for Sony too. Yes, I hope so. They should do it for Sony too, because Sony is actually becoming #1 brand for a lot of people. And it's already out there for Canon and Nikon. Okay, so we have a discount code for you for BenQ monitors, but make sure you email us for that one because we can't make that one public. Shh, don't tell anybody. Okay, so I already selected some images, so let's see what we can do with those. Okay, here we have one of the first, and this is the second one. Now, in this case, because he's wearing black, and everything went wrong in the studio, so in total honesty, I was a little bit afraid that something really went wrong, so let me change to my screen again. So I didn't use any light in light. We're gonna do that next time, so let's just use the shadow slider in this case. Okay, let's just retouch this one. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go straight into Photoshop with this, and I don't want to change anything crop wise. Some people will say, why don't you just crop the shot? I don't want to do that because then I also change the whole look of the shot. So what we're going to do is we're going to create something that's called a very big background. And there's a very simple way for this. You go here into your rectangular marquee, and what you do is you create like this a selection, and you go as close as possible to the model. There we go. Now what you do is edit, transform, scale. And now you just drag the background like this. Okay, that's part one. Great. That already looks way better. You go to the rectangular marquee tool, and you go all the way down here, and you can just move this so it doesn't include the dress, and you go edit, and you go to transform scale, and you just drag it out. There we go. Don't worry about stuff here that changes because we're not done yet. Okay, we do the same thing on the top. So we're going to go all the way down here, and now I actually have to zoom out. That's Command minus, and edit, transform scale. There we go. And sometimes I do act like Bob Ross. Feed on screen, select, deselect. There we go. Okay, so now what I have to do is I have to make sure that my background is actually clean. And now it's very, very dirty. I don't like it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a duplicate layer, and we're going to take the Harry Potter stick, and we're going to select a model. Hold Shift to add to the selection. Oops, that's a bit too much. So go to tolerance, maybe 5 or 6. There we go. Hold Shift to add to the selection. And you have to make sure you can do this really sloppy. Don't include the shadows yet. There we go. You hear me clicking on the Wacom. It really gets a lot of abuse. Okay, and now finally do the shadows. Now why not before? Because she's wearing black and I want to make sure that first my prime selection is done. My main selection, sorry. And now I have to be really careful. Now I can actually even lower the tolerance, but it doesn't need to. You see this? The selection tool in Photoshop is really good. Okay, make sure you get most of it. And again, it can be pretty sloppy. You don't have to be very, very meticulous about this. I don't know if that's the right term, if it's absolutely funny what I say now, laugh. But hey, I'm Dutch. Okay, there we go. Make sure you are here. Okay, there we go. Good enough. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to switch to quick mask. It's incredibly important what I'm going to do now. Make sure nothing, and I absolutely mean nothing of your model is selected. So you can miss some stuff over here, but your model should be 100% clear of the background. So let's go to the brush and let's make sure that we also get in these, because those can be really nasty for what I'm going to do now. Okay, make the brush smaller, not bigger. There we go. Oops. Now some people always tell me, like in quick mask, do you use black or do you use white? I don't remember. If black doesn't work, white will. And if white doesn't work, black will, because there are only two options. So why should you remember which one does what? It's way more work than just pressing the X key and just change between colors, because one of them will always work. If life would be that simple. Well, with elections, you can only choose two. I don't want to go there. Don't worry. Okay. So I'm now making sure that my selection is a little bit nicer. Let's go here. This is actually my model that is now selected. And I told you guys, don't select your model. So this is, I think, something from the dress. Yes. So I'm pressing X again. I'm going to make sure that this is inside my selection, and that's incredibly important. I'm going to show you in a moment why that's so incredibly important. As you can see, I'm doing this pretty rough. Press X again. There we go. Okay, now the brush can be a little bit bigger. Go. Again, this can be rough, don't worry. Okay, there you can see that some of my model is selected again here in the dress, so we have to take care of that. Now with shadows, it's always that the selection doesn't work 100%, but again, you have to put some effort into your Photoshop work, otherwise it would be too easy, and we don't want it easy, we want to work. Okay, there we go. Let me go up. Let me see that there's nothing else selected from the model. No, looks pretty cool. Also in the face. Yep, hairs are correct. Okay, there we go. Fit on screen. Now deselect your quick mask. And now do select, modify, feather. And only feather it for like 3 or 4 pixels, depending on the camera you use. Okay, now fill in. I see that I missed a spot here. Oops. Press X again. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select my model. And I'm going to invert this. And what I'm going to do is cut model. So edit, cut. Now the model is gone from that layer. If you don't believe me, here you go. See, the model is gone. Now I can blur this layer a lot. So I go to Gaussian blur. I pull it all the way up. There we go. The only problem we have is we get a lot of these distortions over here. I always call them Newton rings, but it's not actually true. But they look pretty nasty. And on YouTube you will see it even better because we use compression, but that I can take away. But normally you see them pretty well, especially in the darker areas with gray. So you can solve that very simply by going into Filter, use Noise, add Noise. And you don't need 65%, Frank, you only need 0.7 or whatever. And now it's actually gone. Now if you have a good stream, if I turn it off, you can actually see here that there's some distortion. And if I turn it on, it's pretty cool. So That solves that, and now I have a really nice background, but the model is gone. Okay, go to Edit, go to Past into Place, and now my model is back again. But this looks really bad, as you can see here. So I have to solve that. So Layer, and we go to Merge Down, because if I merge down, I only do these two layers, as you can see before and after. And as you can see here, in the original, this already looks pretty nasty. So in this one, it isn't that bad. But I want to get this a little bit more back, and the background looks way too fakey now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lower my opacity to 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly edit until I like it, because I do want to show that I'm using a gray seamless background. So I don't want it to be too obvious that I Photoshop. And this other part, I can actually show everything, so I don't want it to be too fake. But the top part, I want to be fake, so how can I combine those two? This is where we're going to use a layer mask. So I'm going to put this on 100% because I like the top part like this, but this part I like to be a little bit more like it was. So let's go to Layer, Layer Mask, Reveal All. This puts a white, I always call this a white piece of paper, and it actually shows you everything. So this is the original, this is with the white piece of paper. Now you take a brush, and you make sure it's black, and you have a large brush, very soft brush, and you lower the opacity to, let's say, 45%. And now what you do is you actually paint in the original layer again. There we go. As long as you don't lift up your pen, the effect won't be added. In other words, the effect will stay to 45%. There we go. Now if I lift my pen and I do it again, that's when we start adding stuff. So now it's actually more rough. I like it here, but I don't want that in the background. Okay, there we go. Now I'm ready to do a flatten image, I think. Go to View 100%. As you can see here, this looks pretty nice, and I think on the bottom it will look a little bit more nasty. And that's because he's actually wearing heels, and now I can see what's going on. See, he has all these flowers up here, and I hope you can see that there too. Let me just enhance that for you guys very quickly, because I didn't see that while I was shooting, otherwise I would have probably asked her to use other shoes. You see this when I'm using my shadows? Here you can see that she's actually using, we call them strikjes. Ribbons. Okay, so I want to enhance that a little bit, because otherwise people say, nah, that doesn't look right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a second layer, duplicate layer, and I'm going to use that image adjustments, shadow highlights. I'm going to bring that back. So let's put it on 35%. This is good enough. I don't want it to be too obvious. Now I'm going to do a layer, layer mask, hide all. So now I have that same trick, only now I have a black piece of paper. So I'm going to switch over to white, and I'm still on at 45%, which I absolutely love because it gives you a lot of control. I have to make my brush smaller. I don't know why it keeps going bigger. It must be today. Somehow today is not a good day. And I don't mean anything else. Although, there we go. Okay, now you can see that I messed up there a little bit, so just press the X key and you can paint that back again. There we go. So now I can actually see that she's wearing ribbons. So that saves me a little bit from people going like, oh, that's sloppy retouching. And over here, see, you don't see the shoes. Cool. Okay, that's actually a little bit too much. So change the opacity of the layer. Come on, change the opacity. There we go, this is more than enough. Okay, layer, flatten image. I always flatten my images. A lot of people say, you shouldn't do that. Well, that's the way that you work. I love flattening my image because I know I don't have to go back. Now the rest I'm going to do with the healing brush. I'm just going to go with the healing brush over here. I'm just going to take away some of the nastiness of my background. Not everything, because I still want it to be a nasty background. Because there is no paper that looks totally new. Well, there is, but it doesn't take a long time to be like this. There we go. Now, this is something that a lot of people struggle with. How do you take this out? Because if I do this, you get that really nasty overflowing effect. So what I will normally do is I will go to 200%. Oops, sorry guys. go to 200%. There we go. And make my brush really small. And what I do is I will sample from here. And make sure that you do that correctly. Sample from there. And then you can take this out without that nasty glow effect, as you can see here. That works way better. And that's because the healing brush, of course, is some sort of a tool like the clone tool. It isn't really a clone tool, but it's similar in, oops, as you can see here, it's similar in how it operates. So now, this can take some long time if you want to do it nicely. And actually, when you just soften everything, it goes way faster, but you end up with a result that, for me, looks too fake. So I always try to do it like this. So what I'm going to do now is just finish this really fast for you guys and then clean it up a little bit more later. But I do want to clean it up just a little bit because I also want to show you another technique. But I'm only going to do this part. Okay.
About color checker when in Lightroom, we create preset white balance is changed. But if we use gray card, white balance is different. Why does this happen?
Okay, let me see. I have to see that. There's a question here about color checker. When in Lightroom we create preset white balance is change. I don't know what he means. About color checker. When in Lightroom we create preset white balance is changed. But if we use gray card, white balance is different. Why this is happened? Oh, wait a minute. I think he means when we use a color checker in Lightroom, you create a preset with a certain white balance. But if you use a gray card, the white balance is different. Okay, this is very easy to explain. And let me switch over to this camera because this takes a little bit of an explanation. Can you give me my color checker, please? Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, what he actually tells me, if I use a color checker and I do my white balance on this, so on the gray, and I use how do you call it, a normal gray card, how can it differ between the two? The color checker you have to replace every 2 years because these actually will deteriorate over time. The same goes with a gray card. If you have a gray card from your grandfather that's like 50 years old, throw it away. No, keep it because it's an heirloom, but you can't use it anymore because everything deteriorates over time, so the colors will change. Even if you have two color checkers, one let's say a year old and one that's brand new out of the box, there will be a slight difference. So don't worry about it, it's not bad, because if you always use the same gray card and you balance on the same gray card, you have the same results, right? And that's where it is about. In your photography, you should get consistent results. I don't tell you guys you have to have a brand new color checker because then the grays are exactly the way it should be. We always tint our images. So in other words, as long as we have the same consistent color, that's where this really works. If you have a client that says it has to be the exact color, that's where you have to change your, let's say your color checker every year. If you're like me and you just tint, I exchange them every 2 years and that works pretty well. Okay, we have another. It's good to see that pros miss those small details during a shoot too. Of course, we're only human. And I messed up my internet connection. I dropped a LED panel. Should I go on? Because this is a disastrous broadcast. So a lot of stuff went wrong. So on one side, I'm also a little bit worried about what's going on behind me. And we only were left with one camera. So yeah, a lot of stuff went on and I didn't take notice of that. And normally I would light it also a little bit nicer. But for the idea, it's okay, right? Okay, another guy. Let me see. Frank, did you ever consider taking a final background? Yes, I did. The problem is, try to hang 10 of them in a system. It's very, very heavy. And in the end, I loved vinyl, but it just wasn't handleable for me. I like paper because I can just roll it up. If somebody brings me vinyl that I can actually roll up very easily, just as easy as paper, I'm done. I'm gonna use vinyl because it really looked nice. Even when I lit it and it was pure white, it just looked better. Okay, so let's finish this very quickly because I don't want to keep you guys too long and I still have some other announcements for you. Okay, so in this case, we are almost done. Let's take the clone tool on a very low opacity, let's say 17%. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample here and I'm just going to paint over this area. Now what it does, it will actually smear out the effects, so the problems. And it will make the background look really, really nice and original, rustic. So you won't see that it's retouched like it's very, very, how do you call it, smooth and overdone. But with this technique, you first heal it, and then you just use the clone tool. You can see that there's still some roughness in, but compared to this, it looks way better. You can even do it without the clone tool and just fade it out, because that's what you're actually doing. And makeup artists do this a lot. They fade out the makeup. So they put something on and they fade it out. Painters do the same thing. They put paint in and they fade it out. That's how we create the walls in our studio. It's all fading effects. So this is a really, really cool technique for that. As you can see, the background goes really nice. Okay, so now when I go back, view, fit on screen, it will look a little bit bad on this side because I didn't do that yet. You can see that the background looks way better than it was. And this still needs some work, so what I'm gonna do there probably is just take a big brush and just create a little bit of effect like this. And this is where the Wacom really, really pays off, because you can literally use your pressure sensitivity and create something that's really nice. And do the same thing here, just fade it out. That's what a lot of retouchers do, and what I love to do is just use that fade out effect. And that's where you use your pressure sensitivity of your tablet, and it really works wonders. Okay, let me do some questions and then I think we're done.
Did you do the one from the color checker?
Yeah, I did the one from the color checker and the one from the details.
That's it.
Okay, then I have a really cool thing for you guys. I'm going to show you that on my monitor. We have something we called exposure. Anyway, can you get me the exposure, please? And they actually have a really cool deal for you guys. Oh, this is from the Flash Bender. Of course, you have to buy that one too. So let me switch to my screen very quickly. One moment, guys. Okay, this is actually the packaging for the Flash Bender 2. So that's the one that I'm using, and you have to make sure that you get the one that says the soft silver, because that's the Frank Dorov one, and that's the one that gives you a little bit more power. Okay, the other thing is, and Enoweek is actually holding it. Somehow Enoweek wants to be on camera, so let's give her a deal. Okay, move closer, Enoweek, way, way closer. This is what we call an exposer. Now this is a Dutch company, and we actually love them. And what you can see, it's very, very tight. Not tight, it's very flat, and that's because of the mounting system in the back. And they have a really cool deal for all you American guys. So we're going to show you that very quickly, and after that we have some more announcements for you guys. But first I have to find where I left my exposer. There we go. Okay, we're going to show you how it works, and you will be amazed because this is absolutely awesome.
Bay Photo Exposure features vivid, sharp photo prints paired with a revolutionary new mounting system for a gorgeous wall display. The lightweight aluminum tension system makes exposure quick and easy to assemble. And the specialized hanger ensures prints are always hung perfectly. Your images are printed on a striking vivid satin material using a 12-color ink set. The prints float away from the wall when hung for a modern gallery-ready look with no frame needed. The easy portability makes these perfect for shipping to clients or loved ones, or bringing artwork home from a trip. For more information about exposure from Bay Photo Lab, please do not hesitate to contact us. We're here for you.
Okay guys, we're back and we have some cool announcement, but I need a piece of paper for that. ETTL. This is why ETTL sucks. It's not really, it doesn't really suck, it's cool, but you see what happens? As soon as I hold a piece of paper in front of my face, the exposure of the camera switches. And this is actually what ETTL does, so that's why it's totally, you know, it switches around a lot. And I love ETTL, don't get me wrong. If I'm on a location and I want to do some really quick shots of somebody, I absolutely love ETTL. But overall, I just absolutely love shooting manual. Okay, so on November 23rd, 3rd. That's 2-3, November 2-3. We have a webinar for X-Rite. We're going to do the same thing as we did here. We're just going to talk about photography live on YouTube and Facebook. And we're going to do some really cool stuff about color. So that's going to be awesome. We don't have a model there, but we're going to do some talk about how you get your colors correct and how you can do some other funky stuff with Photoshop to get really that nice look in your shots. Okay, November 27th, we have a small flash in Nijmegen for all you Dutch people. Just go on my website and you can see it. December 10th, we have Fashion to the Max, so make sure you check out our Behind the Closed Doors for that one. And this is a very important one. On February 24 and 25th, we have a new Ultimate Weekend. The Ultimate Weekend is absolutely awesome because that's 2 days and an evening, intense photography training. It's the best workshop you will find on the market. And I can say that because everybody tells me it is. It's just very intense. It's very, very cool. Okay, and March 5th, we're in Germany. Now, the next digital classroom, you want to know when that is, right? That's why I saved that one for last. The next digital classroom is on December 14th. I'm so very sorry that everything went wrong today. I don't know why, but this is not the day in the world where everything went the way we expected it, right? And I'm not political, but I woke up and we did wonder. So anyway, for all my friends out there, America and Europe, Japan, China, wherever, I would like to thank you so very much for watching and so very much for bearing with me through all these disasters we had today. We're going to edit this one and we're going to upload it again on YouTube because we want to have one episode on YouTube. Thank you so very much for bearing with me. Next time we'll have different gear, so make sure you check out that Patreon stuff because you can really help us get even better gear to do this stuff and keep it for free for you guys. So see you next time and thank you so very much for watching. Bye bye guys, we're now going to stop the stream. See you again.